Bible says the Sabbaths will be forgotten. In Lamentations 2:6, we have, "And he, Yahweh, hath violently taken away his tabernacle, as if it were of a garden. He hath destroyed his places of the assembly. Yahweh hath caused the solemn feasts and Sabbaths to be forgotten in Zion, and hath despised in the indignation of his anger the king and the priest." Did Yahweh cause the Sabbath to be forgotten? Let's check out Hosea 2:11. "I will also cause all her myrrh to cease, her feast days, her new moons, and her Sabbaths, and all her solemn feasts." When Yahweh causes you to forget, you forget.
Israel's apostasy. The historical landscape is littered with Israel's apostasy. Every time they apostatized, they forgot the Sabbath, followed other gods, and worshipped in groves upon the high places. Jehovah sent the prophets to restore the knowledge of the Torah and his book of instructions.
Jeremiah 31:35 through 36. "Thus saith Yahweh, which giveth the sun for a light by day, and the ordinance of the moon and the stars for a light by night, which divideth the sea, which the waves thereof roar. Yahweh of Sabaoth of hosts is his name. Of those ordinances of the moon and stars, depart from before me, saith Yahweh. Then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever."
Yes, Israel did indeed forget the Sabbath. But what about the Jews? Did they forget the Sabbath?
Do Jews worship on the true Sabbath? Christians who observe a Saturday Sabbath commonly believe that the Jews have always kept perfect track of when the true Sabbath occurs. The reason is this: the Jews would never worship on any other day but the true Sabbath. Therefore, because they themselves worship on Saturday, that must be the true Sabbath of the Bible.
Well, Jews admit to their calendar change. The belief that Saturday must be the Sabbath of the Bible because the Jews keep that day is an assumption that all Christians have made. I know we made that in the church I belong to. We thought we followed the Jews. However, in light of the fact that the Jews themselves admit that their modern calendar is not the same as it used to be before the 4th century CE. Bible scholars and all who love the Sabbath would do well to re-examine this long-held belief. If it is important to worship on a precise specific day, then the calendar by which you calculate that day must also be the correct calendar.
The Jews deliberately changed their calendar. It is true that the Jews never lost track of the true Sabbath. However, they did deliberately and knowingly change their calendar by which the true Sabbath was calculated. The following quotes, taken from Jewish scholars and historians, are but a small sampling of the evidence available to support the fact that the Jews, by their own admission, changed the calendar established by Yahweh at creation and reestablished by Moshe.
Yes, and we did a YouTube on this. Jewish writings prove the lunar Sabbath is true, and there are many, many pages of quotes there. And here are a few for you today, and we will leave the links below.
Quotes taken from the Jewish scholars and historians. Okay, this from the Universal Jewish Encyclopedia on the topic of holidays. "The new moon is still, and the Sabbath originally was, dependent upon the lunar cycle. Originally, the new moon was celebrated in the same way as the Sabbath. Gradually, it became less important, while the Sabbath became more and more a day of religion and humanity, of religious meditation and instruction, of peace and delight of the soul." Present Jewish calendar was fixed in the 4th century. And then an excerpt from the Jewish Encyclopedia, quote, "Under the reign of Constantius, from, that is, 337 to 362, the persecution of the Jews reached such a height that the computation of the calendar, which was forbidden, for computation of the calendar was forbidden under pain of severe punishment. And then from a work about Maimonides and most other Jewish chronologers agree that the true calendar was based upon the mean motions of the sun and moon, the true having been set aside. And that's from T.R. Mauler Green.
Saturday has only been the seventh day of the week since 321 A.D. In the 4th century, Constantine was in charge, and he rearranged the calendar week by bumping Saturday from the first day of the week to the 7th. The point is that men are changing man-made calendars. But the good news is men cannot change Jehovah's calendar. Saturday became the 7th day of the week in AD 321 by the decree of Roman Emperor Constantine. And about AD 341, the ranking official of the Sanhedrin, Hillel II, was forced by Rome upon pain of suffering to fix the Israelite calendar. The result, among other changes, was that Saturday, the newly minted 7th day of a pagan planetary week, became the Sabbath of Israel. And we did this video about the Hillel II and his fixing of the calendar. I hope you'll watch that.
The Romans prohibited the practice of observing the new moon phases. This from the Jewish calendar, changing the calendar at Torah.org. Quote, declaring the new month by observation of the new moon and the new year by the arrival of spring can only be done by the Sanhedrin. In the time of Hillel II, that is the 4th century A.D., the last president of the Sanhedrin, the Romans prohibited this practice. Hillel II was therefore forced to institute his fixed calendar, thus in effect giving the Sanhedrin's advanced approval to the calendars of all future years.
Here's another quote where Hillel II fixed the calendar, and it's still in use today.
And this is in Judaism 101, the Jewish calendar from Jewfact.org. Quote, in the 4th century, Hillel II established a fixed calendar based on mathematical and astronomical calculations. This calendar, still in use, standardized the length of months and the addition of months over the course of a 19-year cycle so that the lunar calendar realigns with the solar years. Moreover, the dissociation of the 7-day week from nature has been one of the most significant contributions of Judaism to civilization. Like the invention of the mechanical clock some 1,500 years later, it facilitates the establishment of what Lewis Mumford identifies as mechanical periodicity, thus essentially increasing the distance between human beings and nature. Quasi-weeks or lunar weeks and separating it from continuous weeks actually presents two fundamentally distinct modes of temporal organization of human life. The former involving partial adoption to nature, and the latter stressing total emancipation from it. The invention of the continuous week was therefore one of the most significant breakthroughs in human beings' attempts to break away from being prisoners of nature, and we might add, and from God's law, and create a social world of their own. That from Evator Zerubbabel, The Seventh-Day Circle, The History and Meaning of the Week.
The belief that Saturday must be the Sabbath of the Bible because the Jews worship on that day is an assumption that all Christians have made. Yes, the Jews have lost sight of the Sabbath, and they keep Saturday presently. but the Creator's Sabbath has never been lost. Saturday has only been the seventh day of the week since 321 A.D. Whoever is in charge oversees the calendar. The calendar all the world uses today is a Roman calendar, named after Pope Gregory XIII. The lunar solar calendar is the only calendar which has roots in the Bible, and it was established by Jehovah at creation. All other calendars have roots in paganism. To truly keep the fourth commandment, the Sabbath should be calculated by Jehovah's calendar, and that is the moon.
Yahweh said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, for days and for years." And of course, that's Genesis 1, chapter 1 and verse 14. The weekly Sabbath day has never been lost. The Creator's calendar in the heavens has kept track of days and years and seasons since creation. Jeremiah 31, 35 to 36 is, "Thus saith Yahweh, which giveth the sun for light by day, and the ordinances of the moon and the stars for a light by night, which divideth the sea when the waves thereof roar. Yahweh of hosts is his name. If those ordinances depart from before me, saith Yahweh, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever."
That's right. I love those verses because they say that the calendar in the heavens will always be there, and the seed of Israel is always going to be remembered. And so to access more information about the calendar, the Sabbaths, all of the information that we presented above, please go to our website, lunarsabbathday.com. Well, thank you for being here today, and I appreciate everybody, and I hope you enjoy this.